Today's reading is from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This week's reading, Ego, Friend or Foe. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Jesus Christ begins his Beatitudes with the words, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." To be poor in spirit in such a way as to merit the kingdom of heaven doesn't mean to be poor-spirited. Rather, it means to see oneself as owning nothing, since all belongs to God. For all is a manifestation of his consciousness. St. John of the Cross wrote, "If you would own everything, seek to own nothing." That which the ego relinquishes, offering it up to soul consciousness, is reclaimed forever in cosmic consciousness. Nothing is ever lost. Paramahansa Yogananda tells the story in Autobiography of a Yogi of the levitating saint, Baduri Mahashaya. Master, a disciple of this saint once said ardently, "You are wonderful. You have renounced riches and comforts to seek God and to teach us wisdom." It was well known that Baduri Mahashaya had forsaken great family wealth in his early childhood, when single-mindedly he entered the yogic path. "You are reversing the case." The saint's face held a mild rebuke. "I have left a few paltry rupees, a few petty pleasures, for a cosmic empire of endless bliss. How then have I denied myself anything? I know the joy of sharing the treasure. Is that a sacrifice? The short-sighted worldly folk are verily the real renunciates. They relinquish an unparalleled divine possession for a poor handful of earthly toys." The Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter states, "All things are everywhere by nature wrought, in interaction of the qualities. The fool, cheated by self, thinks, 'This I did, and that I wrought.' But ah, thou strong-armed prince, a better lesson mine, knowing the play of visible things within the world of sense, and how the qualities must qualify, standeth aloof from his acts. Thus through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind."
I better just give it up. Good morning. Good morning. Coming down the stairs last Sunday from the sanctuary, Riemann was at the bottom of the stairs speaking with someone, and he said, "Isn't it so, Jamuna?" And I probably could have just said yes. I said, "What?" And he said, both and, isn't it so?" And I said, "Yes." So that's what we've got. That's the answer we've got this morning. Ego, friend or foe, both. And it's all inclusive. The ego we have to deal with, and it got us here after all. It's what brought us into manifestation. Our souls can't come down into this environment, can't enter this schoolyard. We need a body, and the body and the ego come and bring the soul along, and that's what we've got to work with. I have a friend who has recently, things have happened in her life that has put her into situations that are very foreign to her basic nature, and she's had to deal with lawyers and government officials and bank executives and money people, and all of this is quite new to her way of thinking. But what it has afforded her is an incredible opportunity, which she is taking advantage of, to see how her ego is behaving in all these situations. So she was sitting in the IRS office last week, and something got mixed up with how they called her up, or she missed the microphone saying that it was her turn. And so when she did jump up, they said, "I'm sorry you missed it. We handed that on to somebody else." So this was an open door for getting really grumpy, right? Just really grumpy and getting negative about the IRS and all of this. So she was tripping along on this and not feeling very happy about it, but that's just the way it went. And then all of a sudden, a very well-dressed young man with a very big aura came shooting into the waiting room, straight up to the desk, and started in on this young clerk who was trying to do her job as she was trained. And he was just giving her the what for. And my friend, who has a very fresh sense of humor, couldn't help herself. She spoke up. She said, "Excuse me, this isn't a 5-star hotel, it's the IRS." The whole staff of the IRS clapped for her. And she was able to sit there waiting for her turn, realizing how habitual that grump, 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 that way in which we look at others, treat others, classify others. There she was, just, as she said, hating all of them, and suddenly they were all her friends. They were all her friends. They had her come up right away. They took care of her issues. And isn't that the way? So why don't we just bypass the judgment, bypass the grumping, bypass the scolding. People are going to find their way. It's the way the game is set up. And the ego will just get in there and try to turn it back on you. Well, we can be alert to that. We kind of know when we're going in the wrong direction, when we're not moving toward the light, but when we're moving down into the little self and self-concern. There's that wonderful story, and I know you've heard it before, but it's just so wonderful, and I love thinking about it. And you know, in every religion, I'll tell you the story, but in every religion, they know this basic principle. They understand that we're in a tug of war, and they have ways in which they suggest every religion that is doing its job, and the job is to help us get oriented. And so they're working with all of their people to get oriented toward God awareness, the light, something to relieve us of this situation that we're in. And so in a synagogue, for some reason, I guess they had refreshed their minds to the concept that really we are nothing. We are nothing except as we relate to God's job for us. Any other job we take, it's got to be with God, or we're just nothing. So the first rabbi comes in and up to the altar and declares, with this real vigor, "I am nothing, I am nothing." And so the second rabbi comes up and says, I am nothing. I am nothing. So the fellow who cleans the synagogue goes, okay, it's my turn. And he goes up and goes, I am nothing. I am nothing. And the first rabbi turns in a supercilious manner and says, look who thinks he's nothing. There's the ego jumping right in there. I'm better than you are, you know. It's just the way of it. So yes, it's a foe, and yes, it's a friend. We got separated. We got separated from the natural flow somehow. Well, how did we do that? Because when we first incarnated into this world of Maya, we thought this was a pretty good idea. This was really neat. In this place, we could get away with a lot of stuff. And so we began to play. It just seemed like a very good idea. We were convinced for lifetimes and lifetimes that what this world offered was a very good idea. It reminds me of one of Prem Shanti's great statements that she makes to her husband occasionally, and we should make to ourselves. Some of your ideas are better than others. Each promise that this world holds out for us is a mirage. And it's not a mirage in that you can't traverse it in the right consciousness and grow. That you can do. But it's a mirage in that it promises you the happiness that your soul longs for and that it can't do. I mean, look at we're in such an interesting time. We're in such an interesting time on so many different levels. Yogananda said at one time we should read some articles on science, and so I've been having a great time going to the library. They have this section now, they've always had, but it's nicely organized now, where you can pick up books and magazines for 25 cents and 10 cents and take them home. So I've been getting Discover and Scientific American and having a great time trying to wrap my mind against these concepts. Some of them I can and some of them I can't. But it's a wonderful stretch. And it's helpful in this understanding of ego awareness and where we want to go with it. Because that sense of our tininess, how small we are, how can we possibly strut? How can we do that? It's ridiculous. But we do need an anchor, because decades ago we thought we were citizens of a universe. Now it's a multiverse. It's huge. So how do we rightly become citizens there if we don't have some kind of anchor? I mean, it's such a huge place. They have so much more that they understand about black holes and all kinds of things which stretch our understanding of what in the world we're doing here. This place, the scientists are the great supporters of religion at this point, and I think it's going to get more and more clear and obvious, because they're getting to the place where they see something else is going on here. Something else is going on. It's not what it seems to be, and we are not who we seem to be. The only place that we can find the reality of who we are is by taking the hand of God, taking the hand of the divine. I was reading yesterday about the scientists that are exploring the infinitesimal small aspects of the universe. They're exploring deep, deep, deep into the atom. They're sort of retuning Einstein's theories. They're beginning to understand, and they're delving into quantum physics and delving into all of these things, waves and particles. Some things are waves in it, other times they're particles. That whole duality, well, we can relate to that because sometimes we're waves and sometimes we're particles. We want to be waves and catch the light, hold on to the hand of God, and get through this experience filled with the joy of our soul nature, which we brought along with us on the journey. So the ego really is just a holding pattern. It's not the whole of us. It's our companion, Swami Kriyananda says, and Swami, who founded Ananda, direct disciple of Yogananda, whose teachings we follow here. Kriyananda said, the ego is with us until the very end, when we're willing to be, when we know God. We are so strong in that knowing that we relinquish the ego into that light. The ego is a foe when it behaves in a manner that Master Yogananda revealed in one of these wonderful stories in the autobiography of a yogi. So I do want to add this to our exploration here. There's no way I could just tell you this story because it's so colorful, and I want to read it precisely. This has to do with Yukteswar, Yogananda's guru, and he did not suffer fools gladly. And there was a magistrate coming to visit the ashram, and young Yogananda knew that this magistrate had the power to kick them out off their land somehow. And he was all aflutter and wanted Yukteswar to greet this man with the proper respect and, stand up and shake his hand and get him a chair. Yukteswar was not going to do any of that. He sat down. He didn't get up. He didn't rush over to greet his guest. He let the man sit on something strange. It wasn't a chair. Well, anyway, the guy was so full of himself he probably didn't notice he was not treated like royalty then. So, men who are pridefully conscious of highly worldly positions are likely, in Master's presence, to add humility to their other possessions. A local magistrate once arrived for an interview at the seaside hermitage in Puri. The man, who held a reputation for ruthlessness, had it well within his power to oust us from the ashram. I cautioned my guru about the despotic possibilities, but he seated himself with an uncompromising air and did not rise to greet the visitor. Slightly nervous, I squatted by the door. The man had to content himself with a wooden box. My guru did not request me to fetch a chair. There was no fulfillment in the magistrate's obvious expectation that his importance would be ceremoniously acknowledged. A metaphysical discussion ensued. The guest blundered through misinterpretations of the scripture. As his accuracy sank, his ire rose. Do you know that I stood first in the MA examination? Reason had forsaken him, but he could still shout. Mr. Magistrate, you forget this is not your courtroom, Master replied evenly. From your childish remarks, I would have surmised that your college career was unremarkable. A university degree in any case is not remotely related to Vedic realization. Saints are not produced in batches every seminar like accountants. Now, those words can come from a master who's realized. After a stunned silence, the visitor laughed heartily. This is my first encounter with a heavenly magistrate, he said. Later, he made a formal request, couched in the legal terms which are evidently part and parcel of his being, to be accepted as a probationary disciple. So he was behaving badly, but he was ready. That's the great mystery. We don't know how ready we are to turn a corner. It might be in the next minute, it might be tomorrow. I had an amazing dream last night. I still have not totally digested it, but it feels like it had something to do with what I was to speak about this morning. I was in a situation that was a cross between a hospital and a school somehow. It had vibrations of both. And there was this individual that everyone was afraid of. His body had been so destroyed by something that he was encased in plastic. He was just completely encased in plastic. You could see nothing of his human shape. And everyone was very afraid. And you could see his eyes. And from the beginning, I felt so much love for this individual. It was overwhelming in the dream. I felt so much love. I was not in the least afraid. And so this individual came down the hall, and I opened my arms, and he came into it, and I held him and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. It was so sweet. It was tears of joy and compassion. And I awoke, tears running down my face. So it's quite something to do that, and I'm sure you've had experience of that. But I saw that what it was that message of this topic, that we are open to one another. We're not just single, solitary, alone individuals. We're in this all together. And yes, we hold the hand of God, but we can hold the hands and hearts of everyone here who is making that same journey.
Listen to these words from Whispers from Eternity that Jamuna selected for this week. I want to use my own will, but guide it ever, Father, toward the golden paradise of all fulfillment. For I would be infinity's smiling child, confident of being imprisoned no longer behind bars of fruitless desire and withered hopes. I would break the shameful cords of lethargy that have presumed to hold me and step fearlessly into freedom. Released, I now blaze my way through forests of every limitation and delusion. Oh, my little vain ego may strut proudly, saying, "Behold my glory, worship me." But I will look through its transparent form and behold thine unimaginable beauty, clothed in the subtle form of the whole universe. The silence-tuned hearing of my soul will ignore that tiny boasting masquerader, my little self impersonating thee, and will listen rapturously to the wind-borne, fragrant music of thine own matchless voice, whispering across the ages, I am he. Let's have a moment of silence now.